Kneeling before the king, the subordinate says that the empire will take full responsibility, then asks to celebrate his engagement to the princess. His Majesty expresses his anger because he does not understand how the young groom could have sex with his future wife's maid. Because of this, the princess's engagement was broken off for the 6th time. The algorithm was always the same. Before marrying the princess, the prince entered into a relationship with her maid. After this, the princess's suitors asked the emperor to break off the engagement. The most common reason for cheating was Adrian Reese's servant. But every time her mistress Apollonia, despite the betrayal of her maid, stood up for her. Even now, she tearfully tells the king that she really is okay. She sincerely wishes the prince and her servant happiness. The emperor believes that her suitors are taken away every time because she lacks assertiveness. The strange thing is that the princess was always humble, even if she caught the maid with the prince, and even when her groom kissed another. She once again expresses her hope that those two will be happy, and she will not interfere with them. This girl exchanged rage and resentment for humility. As soon as another engagement breaks off, rumors appear that you need to become a princess's maid in order to get a prince. The king remembers that he did not like Apollonia from birth. Even now she cannot save her own marriage. His Majesty orders the princess to disappear from his sight, which she does. On the way, the girl remembers all the gossip about her. Even after this, she does not want to get rid of her maid. She is too weak-willed and stupid to be a princess, and the breaking of the engagement is also her fault. When suddenly Apollonia meets on her way that same maid Adriana, she calls out to her sweetly. Suddenly, instead of a scandal, the princess gently takes her hands and praises her for doing a great job, and now the prince is delighted with her. The maid says that she simply followed her orders, and that if Apollonia had met him herself, the prince would have been crazy about her. The princess gloomily stated that the Romer kingdom was not worth it. Then she asked the servant what would happen if the prince proposed to her. She reassured her that she would do everything so that King Romero was aware of this. He will not allow the prince to marry someone of a lower caste. Apollonia says that this is wonderful and thanks the servants, after which she allows her to go and rest. It was exactly like this. The princess pretends that she is ready to get married, and she herself sends a maid to the chosen one who meets his tastes. The servant notifies Apollonia that there is no end to the letters of gratitude. Former servant Bianca sends greetings and news that she will soon give birth to her second child. The servants, who, thanks to the princess, married the princes, became her reliable allies. Adriana says that everyone hopes that the king's plan will succeed and is ready to help at any time. Apollonia says that it took her father 10 years to kill her mother and the previous king. She will have to try hard to get back what was stolen from her. From early childhood, she was vaguely aware, but soon the girl was sure that her father hated her. She was a child, so she did not understand the reasons for his hatred of her, because she never had conflict situations with her father. In fact, the reason turned out to be that she was raised by her maternal grandfather, Emperor Pascal III, and it also had something to do with her mother, the Empress. As a child, Apollonia asked her grandfather over a cup of tea why her father loved only her brother Paris. Grandfather said it was because he was his heir, and when the girl asked about herself, the man replied that she was his heir, and for him Paris could not be compared with her. He promises to make Apollonia his heir, since her mother abandoned the fight for the throne. The girl wonders why she and not her brother. The grandfather says that he will explain this to her when she grows up, then offers to start a certain exam, which the time has come to take. The girl lists everything she needed to know for the exam: the characteristics and history of all noble families, an analysis of the ruler's achievements in 4 languages. Although she made every effort, the girl was unable to complete one task from her grandfather, to list the shortcomings of the reign of Pascal I. Everything seems complicated to the main character. She recalls one flaw in the army of the enlightened monarch, who defeated the invaders from Layla and established peace. Suddenly, she realizes that she can find answers in rare books located in the imperial palace. The princess immediately decides to run there and at the same time see her mother. At this time, a terrible thing happens in the imperial palace. His Majesty threw dishes at his wife. She doesn't understand why he's doing this to her. Guy hypocritically pities Elenia, who continues to say that she believed in their love, that she did everything for his sake, and that she raised her son Paris as her own. The man agrees with her and says that thanks to her efforts, Paris will become a king, not a prince. He is his son, and the son of Satina. Elenia was taken aback. Arietta Satin is the boy's real mother. The mother of the main character always believed that, having matured, Paris would help the emperor. She also believed that if she raised his son with dignity, then Guy would only look at her. Bursting with tears, Elenia asks her husband if his declarations of love were also a lie. Guy says that it was just a game of love, and that she is too naive because she fell for his status, appearance, and child. He says that she is as stupid as her father, who took the life of his beloved, destroying her entire family on charges of treason. Elenia does not believe her husband's words. He says that it will be very unfair if her devilish dad takes away the empire from Paris. The girl still asks Guy to say that this is all not true, but just his stupid jokes. But the man, after slapping his wife, declares that he never really loved her. Then he remembers that he needs to thank his wife for raising their son, although he says that this will not save her and his father, but it will wash away their sins. Speaking about Apollonia, Guy makes a promise to leave her alive, and in the future to marry her to a prince of another power in order to strengthen his empire. Before she died, Elenia tried to tell her daughter to run away from here, but she didn't have time. Her husband was glad that it was finally over with her. Apollonia, who had been watching her mother pass away all this time, froze in horror. The girl guessed that her father had planned everything in advance. She couldn't prevent her mother's death, so she hurried to her grandfather's office. Bursting into his room, the princess saw a sad picture. The emperor had no face, and blood was flowing from his mouth. Apollonia said that she would immediately call the doctor, but her grandfather asked her not to do this, but to listen carefully to him, since he had little time left. The man started talking about a certain object that was hidden where no one would find it. Grandfather did not have time to say what needs to be done when the time comes. His soul left his body forever in front of his granddaughter. The young princess was very painfully experiencing the death of her loved ones, but she knew one thing for sure: she needed to take the throne. The main character swears to herself that she will definitely take revenge for everything that was taken from her. Apollonia's plan for revenge soon began to come to fruition. During the ceremony, a bunch of noble guests congratulate His Majesty, but the king himself does not delight those present with his smile. 7 years ago, during the funeral of Pascal III and Elenia, Guy Lipper was so grief-stricken that he did not even touch food. Watching Guy cry, people gossiped that the meeting between his and Her Majesty in the Lipper domain was fateful. They loved each other, but met secretly in order to avoid the emperor's wrath. Some say that the king cared about his son-in-law, but others think that this is even more unfortunate, and it will be very difficult for the young prince after their death. His Majesty treated Guy as his own son. He comes from an ordinary family of hereditary military men, became a general and accomplished many feats, but the happiness lasted until the emperor and Her Highness died. Guy did not eat or drink for several days, but only mourned his dead wife. To gain the sympathy of those around him, the image of a warrior broken by the death of his beloved was enough for him. But after the funeral, strange things began to happen. Guy says that since he is currently the only adult representative of the imperial family, he will manage all affairs. Although his reign was temporary, he built his empire. He rebuilt the palace, and in 7 years placed his associates in diligent positions. Guy believed that the place next to the emperor could not remain empty for long, but when he had concubines, panic began in the palace. The Samara Empire itself is multifaceted, and only the emperor could afford to have many concubines. However, Guy was not a descendant of royal blood. It is unheard of to ascend to the throne and, being the husband of a princess, marry another. The 3 men gossip in surprise that the king already has 5 chosen ones, and that his actions are contrary to generally accepted norms. With so many concubines, it is difficult to call him a real ruler. In response to growing discontent on the part of the ministers, Guy organized a purge and appointed members of his family to the vacated posts. After this, there was not a single person left in the palace who would dare to contradict him. Passing by the gentlemen who were having fun at the holiday, the princess, in search of a servant, ran into a young lady on whom she almost spilled wine on her dress. She turned out to be Katerina Lowenheim, the first lower-ranking aristocrat to marry Guy. Having become the emperor's wife, she began to turn up her nose. Katerina argues that a palace in which there is an emperor but no empress is worth nothing, which means she needs to strengthen her status. She believes that the most effective way to do this would be to congratulate Apollonia, which she does by greeting Princess Naya sweetly. The main character politely asks her for forgiveness for her mistake, calling the lady simply His Majesty's wife. Katerina asks her again. The princess already wanted to leave the woman, but she shouted at her to come back because they had not yet finished speaking. Katerina says they never greeted each other properly. She bows elegantly before Apollonia, hinting that she should do the same. But instead, the main character simply said that she was also pleased to meet her. This confused Catherine Loyenheim. The emperor's wife expresses her dissatisfaction with the princess's lack of proper etiquette, since she is now her mother. She tells Apollonia that she should not call her His Majesty's wife, even if they speak in private. May's servant intervenes in the conversation. The servant tells the young lady that the princess is just learning etiquette, so she is not that experienced yet. Maya reminds that the status of the emperor's wife is lower compared to the status of the real empress. She also says that she is only a stepmother, not an empress. Katerina says in surprise that no servant has ever allowed herself to do this. Mai's words angered the young lady. She says that in the last 10 years the emperor had no wives, so the princess was not used to etiquette with them. The maid promises to teach the princess proper etiquette, while Katerina irritably reminds that servants also have social standards. Maya tells the lady that if she has upset her in some way and wants to punish her, then let her first explain the reason. Out of surprise, His Majesty's wife could not utter a word, which is why the servant decided that she could leave. When suddenly Katerina, in a fit of hatred, grabs the servant by the hair, shouting that she did not allow her to leave. The princess managed to resolve the situation. They were worried about her maid. She separated the girls, thereby preventing a fight. Apollonia believes that Katerina does not dare to look down on anyone. Naya is shocked that such a woman wants to take a high position in the palace. The young lady advises the princess to devote more time to education and says that she cannot treat the one who will become the empress in the future. One of the men who observed their conflict said that His Majesty really values Mrs. Loyenheim, which means she must be respected. Another man supported him, saying that Katerina should be treated with respect because she is older. Moreover, when the emperor marries her, the empress will become a full member of the family. The main character was slightly surprised by their words, because in the presence of Paris, they did not dare to utter a word. At this time, His Majesty's wife continues her opera about how she will soon become an empress. She asks the princess to learn all the rules of etiquette. Suddenly, Apollonia's face darkened. She said sarcastically, without any joy, that today she finally met her mother. Katerina was surprised by her sudden change in mood. The princess gives her respects. The young lady liked it. She says that she forgives her for her rudeness, after which she asks the named daughter to get up. But the princess did not get up, but began to read out a long text, similar to a prayer. Katerina tried to stop her, but she did not stop talking. The lady turned to the man for help, and he said that Naya was reading a long greeting from the members of the imperial family from the Book of the Empress. Apollonia continued to speak, but the man warned Katerina about one problem. In the middle of the speech, there is a part where she must give her answer. The Book of the Empress, in the imperial family, is one of the most difficult procedures in the welcoming ceremony. This is an oath for the newly crowned empress. Those who were appointed empresses memorized this book, because if their answer in the middle was wrong, they would not be recognized. Watching the princess, Katerina is angry that there is no freedom for her, because she simply asked to greet her in a human way. Finally came the middle of the speech, where the emperor's wife hesitantly said that the most important thing was grace and virtue, but the maid corrected the mistress by saying that she should have said, perseverance. Apollonia continued her speech. When it was Katerina's turn to speak her words again, she turned to the servant for help, and she suggested that she needed to say words about respect. The main character continued to speak about caring for the king as a father, but the young lady was already angry and tired of her bullying. Katerina irritably shouts that she should only care about her husband. Apollonia was surprised that she knew about this. The emperor's wife says that she knows the Book of the Empress very well. She's just a little confused with the answers. But May's servant clarifies that the princess has long finished quoting this book and is now reciting Oriental proverbs. Katerina, who had just been humiliated, was stunned and surprised, and the audience who was watching her laughed. Apollonia tells May not to rush to conclusions, after which she decides to take her leave, as she is very tired. The young lady is incredibly angry at the words of those around her. She did not understand the principle. Someone knew that this would happen, and Her Highness did as she was told. Katerina did not want to let the princess go after she had disgraced her so much, so she stepped on her dress, but immediately apologized behind her back. But she didn't stop there. The girl made a cunning move and broke dishes near Apollonia, the fragments of which scattered all over the place. Because of this, a large scratch appeared on the main character's hand. Other gentlemen noticed this and asked to call a doctor as soon as possible. The girl tells the worried servant that she is fine, She will go to her room and take some medicine, and Maya can return to the banquet. However, Apollonia realizes that she has a problem. She decides to hurry so as not to meet her aunt, who might notice her wound. Suddenly, a certain woman blocked her path and asked what happened to her hand. The princess was disappointed, because it turned out to be her aunt, Petra Lipper. She is Guy's beloved sister and mistress of the palace. Like her brother, she is also determined and wise, but her cruelty cannot be compared with anyone else's. She has been buying silk for 10 years and wearing jewelry from the Luan brand, which has established itself as the best luxury brand in the empire. Through money and business, she strengthened the influence of the Lipper family. Petra says that she heard about some commotion and wonders if it happened because the maid was insolent to the guests. Looking at the stern expression on the woman's face, anyone could understand that if you want to survive, you must get rid of what makes you special. Petra wanted to look at the princess's wound, but she said that everything was fine with her. Aunt said that this is not so because she is bleeding. The woman was grimly surprised by something she noticed about her niece. She called the situation very curious. The aunt says that because Apollonia tied the wound with a handkerchief, the blood does not flow, so one might really think that the wound is not so serious. The main character asks Petra for forgiveness, and then leaves. She is very excited about what she just heard. Katerina, noticing her husband's sister, remembered that the emperor trusted her wholeheartedly. She hopes that she will be able to get out. She tells Petra that she doesn't know what she saw, but she didn't do anything wrong, and the glass near her highness broke completely by accident. Petra asks the lady whether she really demanded that the princess greet her as an empress, to which she shrugs it off. The woman says that although she takes care of the affairs of the palace, she also pays attention to teaching the princess. She is sorry that Katerina did not appreciate her work. The emperor's wife began to make excuses, but the aunt said that if a deficiency was noticed in the palace, then she should solve the problem. Petra orders the guards to remove Lowenheim's daughter from the palace because she has insulted the imperial family. Katerina wanted to object, but Mrs. Lipper said that from now on she was a sinner since she had violated palace order, which amounted to treason. The sinner began to scream and resist, when suddenly an unexpected person appeared in the hall. The public was very surprised when they saw His Majesty, who personally came to the showdown. Guy very coldly, without a drop of love, asked his wife why she was so noisy. The girl, who had great respect for her husband, was speechless. Petra explained to her brother that his wife dared to hurt the princess. At this time, Katerina tried with all her might to say the opposite. The emperor said that this was indeed a crime, then began to think about what he should do with the sinner. He orders Katerina to be overthrown from the throne and expelled from the palace, because no one dares to challenge him. The criminal says that he treats her too harshly. Guy believes that this is not so, because insulting the princess and injuring her is a criminal offense. Katerina hears a shocking verdict from her husband. She will be overthrown from the throne, and in 3 days the guillotine awaits her. She, not holding back her tears, did not stop screaming for mercy, but the guards still took her out of the hall. Having gotten rid of one of his brides, Guy grinned contentedly, after which he ordered the musicians to continue playing music. Members of the imperial family of the Samara Empire are believed to be descendants of Apollo. The descendant of the family had blonde hair and red eyes with a golden tint. Over time, the blood fades and the symbol of Apollo becomes blurred. However, some descendants of the imperial family still have this appearance. For a long time, families have respected those who exhibited these traits. But for Emperor Guy, this feature was almost an eyesore. Examining her wound, the main character assumes that in 2-3 days there will be no scar left of it. For a long time, the princess tried to hide the fact that she had the same fast regeneration speed as Pascal III. It was precisely this feature of hers that my aunt guessed when she examined her wound. The girl thinks that Petra already knows about everything. Apollonia asked Maya to call a certain Cid, but she said that she was worried about her hand. The mistress says that she is fine, but advises the maid to quickly treat her cheek. The servant says that her health is normal, but the princess admits that she is very worried about her because she herself will recover quickly, unlike her. Maya says that she shouldn't worry about her because she is the one responsible for her health. The girls came to the conclusion that they would not worry about it. While the servant went to call Lord Cid Brian, the main character thought that now she was not worried about scratches, but about her own safety. Meanwhile, Petra enters the emperor's office. She advises her brother to dress warmly, as it is cold today. Guy tells her not to worry about it, then asks if Viscount Lowenheim has heard the news. The mistress of the palace notifies that the Viscount is begging to save the life of his daughter Katerina and promises to give all his fortune for this. The emperor was interested in such a proposal, but his sister said that it was not worth recalling an order that had already been announced. The woman believes that this is not the case when the ruler promises to throw out the empress and then regrets his decision. The emperor laughs and says that he did not expect that 10 days after he ascended the throne, everyone would so quickly fuss and find him a candidate wife. Petra says that Catherine was too greedy and that they set a shining example of what will happen to those who do not follow the rules of the imperial family. The woman asked her brother what he would do with the princess, because her cut was serious, and she even tried to hide the wound. The aunt says that Apollonia could be dangerous if her life is spared, because it is possible that she has inherited not only external qualities, but also characteristics of the family. Guy admits that his sister may be right, and asks how such a sissy as a princess can be dangerous if her wounds simply heal quickly. Petra says that this concerns her legitimacy, but the man reminds that there were very few empresses in their empire, and there is no point in Naya becoming one. The emperor's sister proves that all the rulers of the empire were revered as wise, but Guy still believes that a woman is not fit to be an empress. He says that both Petra and Apollonia should know their place. The latter, in his opinion, is weak-willed, so she has no place in politics. The man is worried that Apollonia will follow in her mother's footsteps and take power, while Paris's appearance is imperial, but not his eyes. Petra says they could have problems if the ministers question his legitimacy. Guy believes that it would be better to give his daughter away in marriage. In this case, she will become the ruler of another power, and Paris, who will soon grow up, will easily take the fate of the empire into his own hands. The woman reluctantly agreed with His Majesty, and he waved his hand to her and said that she could go. Sometime later, walking through the imperial court at night, Patria whispers to a subordinate that he needs to meet with Saphir and deal with someone. She realizes that if she now gets rid of the blood of Apollo, which flows in her niece, then everything will be over. At this time, the princess tells Sid to get ready to meet the night guest. Yet there was something in the palace that was not under the control of Guy and Petra, a secret passage with a secret room. The late emperor secretly prepared this place to be used as a refuge or hiding place. In addition to gold, crowns, and precious stones, magic crystals for making weapons or witchcraft were kept in this room. The princess says over a cup of tea that although they have learned a secret hidden from Lipper, she advises the interlocutor to be careful. She doesn't know yet whether it's a murderer or a spy, but she's sure that they'll try to send someone secretly. She speaks with Sid Bryan, the manager of a separate palace. He was the emperor's right hand and general. Even Guy could not influence his authority. Sid says that if he is a spy, then he may be among the newcomers to the palace. He promises to be even more attentive than usual. If it turns out to be a murderer, as Apollonia thinks, then Sid will need time to convince the emperor or carry out their idea right under his nose. The princess believes that the killer will be in the palace even before the scandal with Katerina subsides. If they hurry, it will only take 3 days. Sid says they don't have much time and promises to prepare a protective barrier for the girl. He suggests that she hide or find a double, but Apollonia refuses, realizing that she won't be able to escape, and if the killer gets into the bedroom, she won't be able to escape. The man says that her protective barrier will help carry out the plan, because only he and the current emperor can pass through it. The girl claims that the most important thing is not to let the killer escape, and if the plan is successful, it may allay the Duchess's suspicions. Sid supports the main character by saying that she will definitely succeed, while the girl herself is thinking about one incident 6 years ago. While Apollonia was caressing her horse, her aunt's son ran up to his mother and said that he wanted her horse for himself. Petra told the princess that if she did not want this, then it was okay, but in this case, one of her servants would become Gareth's slave. As she leaves, the aunt tells her son to show respect, because if something happens to Her Highness's horse, there will be a disaster. Then, 2 days later, after the main character gave her horse to Gareth, the animal was found in the bushes already lifeless. Unfortunately, after this, the princess more than once had to swallow her resentment and feel her helplessness. When she was 12, she said she wanted to learn fencing. Paris's fencing teacher, Sir Kenneth, supported her, but Guy exiled him to the outskirts. Kenneth, with a wound in his arm, was forced to relocate, and when Apollonia was 14, her aunt angrily threw Princess Elenia's book from her hands and asked if she had expelled Paris and Gareth from the palace. Petra scolds the girl for becoming attached to things again, even though she warned her not to do so. This greatly irritated the main character. Meanwhile, in reality, an unknown hooded man, armed with a sword, quietly made his way into the princess's bedroom through the window. He was very surprised when he saw a young girl sleeping in the bed. He curses Saphira, but if he leaves her alive, he himself will die a painful death. The killer won't even know how such a girl could have interfered with Petra Lipper, but his life is more valuable to him. Having loudly asked God to rest her soul, the man swung his sword straight at the princess, when suddenly he was thrown several meters back. The awakened Apollonia wished the stranger the same, and said that she did not know who he was, but his sword would not be able to break through her protective barrier. He guessed that the princess was waiting for his appearance. The killer remembers that, according to Saphir, his sword can cut everything, even this barrier. The next swing of the sword shattered the princess's protective dome, which plunged her into great shock. The killer advises her not to be so arrogant. Apollonia was about to lose her life, but suddenly, Sid Bryan burst into her bedroom and throws a knife towards the killer. He managed to wound and knock the criminal to the floor. Sid apologizes to Her Highness for coming so late. The main character is surprised that the killer only needed 2 hits to destroy the barrier. The girl tells Sid that she doesn't hold a grudge against him, after which she asks him to prepare a chair for her to interrogate the criminal. Her order was carried out, and the princess asks the stranger to take off his hood, under which there was a blue-eyed guy with white hair. Saphiro worked for the Lipper estate, training boys to be con artists and assassins. Those he trained were called the Wolves of Saphiro. These orphans went through terrible training and became the best. As Saphiro grew older, there were fewer and fewer boys. In the Wolves' prime, they were notorious for being the best of the worst. Sid is surprised at the guy's youth, and the princess asks the stranger if he is really the Wolf Saphiro, to which he remains silent. Sid is confident that they are the only ones who can be sent in one day. He heard that the wolves still remained, but he did not think that they were so strong. Apollonia asks the guy if he knows who she is, but in response, she again receives silence. Then the girl orders him to listen. The person he was ordered to kill is Petra's niece and Guy Lipper's daughter. Then she asks the killer the most intriguing question. Why didn't he kill her when he had the chance? Because he himself said that he could not exchange his life for hers. The Wolf of Saphira once again remained silent. And then Sid reminded the princess that morning would soon come, and she needed to get rid of him as soon as possible. Naya says that if the killer were missing, her aunt would probably kill Saphiro to get rid of the evidence. The girl decides to leave the guy captive for 3 days. She thinks that the wound on his shoulder is too serious, so she asks him to give the guy painkillers, and after 3 days they will need to get rid of him. Suddenly, the first words were heard from the wolf, which brought the main character into a stupor. He will ask to kill him. The guy repeats that if he fails his mission, then only death awaits him. Therefore, he asks to kill him in 3 days, if they consider it necessary. Her Highness assumes that he has a low opinion of his master. Wolf says that he never considered these bastards, Saphiro and Duchess Lipper, to be his masters. He was simply not lucky enough to escape from them. Apollonia began talking excitedly about how her grandfather had told her stories about how Saphiro tortured young children and trained them to be killers. She heard that children were losing their minds, shackled in body and soul. Just like wolves who will not go against their alpha, children will never go against Saphiro. The guy is surprised that she knows a lot, but says that not all wolves are the same. At that moment, the girl noticed a scar on his chest. The princess guesses that he survived this, after which she asks the guy about his age. He says he is 17. The main character tells Sid that she has changed her mind and now wants to shelter this wolf cub who was abandoned by her aunt. After a while, other palace workers came to the princess's bedroom, who were shocked by the news that some crazy person had almost raped the lady. While the man calmed the girl down, those around him were surprised at how cunning the criminal's plan was, that even the soldiers on patrol didn't notice him. No one suspected that an assassination attempt had taken place. Since Paris is the heir to the throne, Apollonia was only a princess who did not pose any threat. The next day, Petra, peering out the window and drinking wine, praises today's good weather. But a subordinate comes to Madame and whispers some important news in her ear. His words anger Petra so much that she throws a glass of wine at one of her servants. Before the maid had time to recover from the abuse, her mistress ordered her to comb her hair immediately. The subordinate immediately completes the task, but Petra again didn't like something. She wanted to raise her hand to the girl again. Fortunately, at that moment, another maid enters the room and tells the lady that His Highness is calling her to the palace. Petra was pleasantly surprised by this, and turning to her servant Adriana, said that she would go to the palace with her. When his sister arrived, Guy asked if she had heard the news. The woman says she heard. His Majesty's temper flares, as news that the princess was nearly raped spreads quickly. They can only hope that this incident does not develop into a scandal. The Emperor says that he is sure that Petra foresaw this. He claims that he will not turn a blind eye to this, even if there is no evidence, as Petra thinks. Guy is worried that the story could escalate into the fact that the princess was actually raped, and then the reputation of the empire would be ruined. He ironically asks if a girl who can't tell a murderer from a rapist is a threat to him. Petra mentions the healing of her wounds. The ruler aggressively says that the princess's healing ability also does not pose a threat to him. The sister asks him to calm his anger. However, Petra fears that the stupid people of this nation will consider Apollonia's ability to be gifted by God and start a rebellion. Sighing heavily, Guy decides to end their conversation here. He promises to go and see how dangerous the main character can be. But he tells Petra that if his thoughts that she is harmless turn out to be true, then she will have to throw away these stupid thoughts forever. The lady agreed with His Majesty, after which the order was heard to bring the princess. The Lippers didn't have to wait long, as a concerned princess soon entered the room and greeted them politely. The Emperor says that he called her here to discuss yesterday's incident. He wonders if she saw the criminal's face. Bursting with tears, the girl says that she could not see anything. She worries that they will come for her again, and she will become unnecessary to anyone. Looking at his sister, Guy thinks that she should know that this was pointless. But a few tears are not enough to dispel her suspicions. The father promises to make sure this doesn't happen again. He only asks Apollonia to make sure that the servants do not spread false rumors. The man then reached for her hand and asked if she had actually hurt herself at the ceremony. He asks the princess to show the wound, but she began to say that there was nothing wrong with her hand and that the wound was not deep. She asks her to forgive her for making everyone worried. Apollonia continued to shrug it off so as not to show her wound, but Petra threateningly reminded her that she had no choice, because this was the order of the emperor. But the main character again did not want to show the wound, since it looks too terrible even for her maids. Guy's patience ran out, and he himself, grabbing the girl's hand, untied the bandage to take a look. The emperor and his sister were surprised to find a fresh, bleeding wound that would not heal. Sid says that the princess's wound needs to be treated immediately, to which the father agrees, and asks to make sure that such incidents do not happen again. The ruler ordered the princess to be taken back, while Petra did not say a word due to the misunderstanding that had arisen. Walking through the garden, Sid asks the princess to be patient a little longer until they return to her room and wash it off. The man says that Apollonia's will is very strong, since she applied poison to her own wound. She asks if he is offended by her for this. The main character hears pleasant words for herself. He is proud that she is not afraid of getting hurt. In this, she is somewhat similar to her late grandfather. Suddenly, a maid appears on their way. The main character recognizes her immediately because she is her aunt's servant. But for some reason, she cannot look the princess in the face. Sid orders her to face her highness when they speak to her, but the servant says she can't because she looks disgusting. The main character notices that this maid is behaving the same way as before. She is considered practically a slave, but was persistent in her refusal of Gale's advances. Once, at one of the emperor's festivities, Gale made a bet with his friends that this maid would not play hard to get with him for a long time. He says she can reject him all she wants, but all he has to do is do this for her to submit to him. Apollonia reflects that if she leaves now, as if she knows nothing, then she will be no different from the rude Petra. She doubts that saving one servant will atone for her sins, because she could not save any of those whom her father and aunt killed. But still, the girl decides to try and ask Sid to leave her alone with the maid. When the girls were left alone, the princess clarified whether the girl's name was Adrian Reese. She was surprised and asked how she knew. The main character says that her face is not easily forgotten, and this is the second time she has come to the palace with her aunt. Adrian confirms the mistress's words. Apollonia asks if she was the one who so persistently rejected Gale's advances. The maid was slightly taken aback by such a sudden question, but said that if it weren't for her family, she would have preferred to be dead, which confirms Naya's guesses. Even when communicating with aristocratic ladies, Gale often flirted with young, impressionable maids. But as soon as the girls gave in to him, his attitude towards them changed. Gale is a player through and through. Realizing that Adrian could become his next victim, the princess asks her if she has been to the flower garden behind the palace. The servant began to think that Apollonia was joking, but she began to say that that garden was created by her grandfather, and now her brother Paris is looking after it. In the family's private imperial garden, There is a person who can wander there as he pleases. The princess immediately reveals a secret. This is Gale Lipper, but he does not go to this garden alone. Apollonia says women's accessories and underwear are often found in the garden. These things still continue to appear there. Her Highness saw that the womanizer planted angelica flowers, the smell of which can cause dizziness. The main character is sure that he is using these flowers to take advantage of the ladies. As she leaves, she says that flowers are not so intoxicating if you keep the antidote on hand. If Adriana prepares in advance, she can avoid a terrible date with Gale. The embarrassed maid did not answer her mistress. After she left, Adriana became lost in thought. Returning, Sid asks the princess if she plans to recruit this servant as a spy. Apollonia says that's not true, and she just sees that Adriana hates Gale as much as she does. The man reminds her that she is a maid at the Lipper estate. She won't be able to escape easily if the princess helps her. The main character says that she will look into this in the future. Sid asked if this meant that her help ended there. The princess does not answer anything. She asks the man to follow Gale's next time if he comes to the palace again. He laughs and says that's what he thought. He believes that the princess has chastity and dignity, like the former emperor. These actions reflect her potential to be an outstanding leader. Being an orphan and the wolf of Saphira, the white-haired boy is used to being treated like a tramp. When they saw him, people shouted in disgust that this was their territory and drove the guy away to beg in another place. And when the wolf tried to steal bread, because he could not get food for himself any other way, people spat irritably and called him a geek. Suddenly, Petra appeared in his life and lured him in with the promise of tasty food every day. Disgust, rejection, anger, uncontrollable greed, indifference, and madness were reflected in the eyes of Saphiro, who stole an 11-year-old child and proclaimed himself the owner. A year has passed since the guy became his dog, and all of Saphir's rivals died by his hand. But 6 years later, reading a new criminal assignment, the white-haired man says that he does not want to do this. The owner says that his orders are not discussed, and he is in no position to object. Saphir orders the wolf to memorize what he has written. The guy has no choice but to accept the order. The owner threatens the subordinate with deprivation of life if he does not carry out all the instructions. However, then Saphir corrected himself. He must fulfill what was written, if not he, but they want to live. The wolf told the man to wish him success. But recently, for the first time in a long time, the orphan had hope in the form of Apollonia, who wants to shelter him. This is the first time he feels so strange. He sees in someone not disgust, but hope. 6 days have already passed since the guy became the princess's prisoner. He has no desire to escape, and if he returns, the Lippers will instantly take his life. The wolf sees no point in fleeing the palace if here he sleeps on a soft bed, lives in a clean and warm room, and eats delicious food. He wanted to lie down and sleep, when suddenly the princess came into his room. She sits down on a chair opposite the guy, who is protected from her by a barrier. The girl asks about his well-being and name. He does not answer, and Apollonia, who has come to terms with his silence, says that she has come to bring him news. Her Highness notifies that Saphiro is dead. This brought the guy into a stupor. He asks if the lady is sure of the veracity of the information. As evidence, Apollonia shows him the bloody pendant they took from the crime scene. Having examined the object closely, the wolf answered with a short and indifferent, "I see." The princess was very surprised by this. The guy doesn't understand what she expected from him. He says he has nothing to say to the devil who died so easily. Apollonia reflects that her sources were mistaken. She thought that all of Saphira's wolves were so loyal to him that they would follow him even after death. White-haired, meanwhile, says that he considers himself a failure. He was good at torture, but he himself almost died because of it. His right arm was weakening, so Saphiro decided to let him live. The princess, remembering that he broke her protective barrier with only 2 blows, realizes that the owner's mercy is connected with his potential. She says that since he already knows that if he returns, he will die immediately, she wants to give him a chance at a new identity. The princess warns that his name and what he did in the past do not matter to her. But from now on, he must be faithful only to her. Suddenly, the guy comes close to the edge of the barrier and peers at Apollonia. He says maybe she finds him attractive too. Her Highness calls his behavior offensive, but the wolf reminds him that she herself told him to live for her sake. She says that's not what she meant. Apollonia says that if he considers her his mistress, he will not demand the same loyalty as Saphiro. But it seems to the guy that the princess doesn't understand 2 things. Firstly, she thinks that she can easily kill him. With a slight movement of his hand, the wolf breaks the protective barrier, which shocks the lady. He explains that he can control the spirit of his sword, even if he is not holding it in his hands, so it is the princess who is in his power. Apollonia orders him to let go of her hand, which he grabbed. She says that if he touches him again, he will make him suffer more than he had to suffer at Lippers. The main character reminds the guy that he must be obedient if he wants to save his life. But the orphan repeats that the princess still does not understand another thing. She cannot free him because he cannot escape from Lippers' shackles. He displays his symbol on his neck, which appears when they begin the hunt. If the princess sees this, then they are already looking for him. So until his death, he has only one personality, which is why he wants Her Highness to take his life. The main character says that she can try to dispel the spell, but for this she needs his devotion, which she does not want to obtain through torture or force. According to the girl, getting rid of the spell is not so difficult. He just needs the blood of his master, which, in fact, flows in the princess's body. Every spell has a key to break it. The most romantic is a kiss or a declaration of love. But for Sephiroth's wolves, it's Lippers' blood. As a descendant of Guy, Apollonia has their blood. The girl, leaving, says that in 7 days she will bring the sorcerer to her birthday. She asks the guy to think about his death when the symbol is dispelled. She doesn't think that after this his devotion will be less attainable. Apollonia asks to be called Her Majesty, as required by etiquette. She was about to open the door when suddenly she heard something from the guy. He said his name, Uriel Bide. After a while, remembering the princess, Uriel thought that she was ordering him to obey, as if she were the only one who had cast a spell on him. And then, when his new mistress told him her full name, for some reason he wanted her to smile. The main character and Sid, meanwhile, say that they have already found the sorcerer, and that he will come to the hall as a distant relative of the latter. She says that if the plan succeeds, she must avoid her aunt. The man recalls that her mother and grandmother always wanted to see her in her debut ball gown. They even argued about who would greet the princess first. Sid says that her mother and grandmother would like her to enter adulthood as a strong girl, especially in such a dress. The girl says that the ceremony is important to her, as is the plan, but he interrupted by saying that there is a difference between excitement about adulthood and the ceremony. Before he leaves, he asks the princess to be careful. Apollonia also advises him to take care of himself. The princess, dressed in a beautiful debutante dress, enters the hall where the celebration of the ceremony is already in full swing. Apollonia walks down the carpet, bows elegantly, and is greeted before His Majesty. Petra reflects that the princess's rape has become the hottest gossip, so until the rumors die down, it will be difficult to do anything. Guy tells his daughter that she has become quite an adult. The main character believes that this is only thanks to his care. The emperor then says that he has good news for the princess that will fit perfectly into their celebration. This news shocked the girl. He received a proposal for her marriage. Apollonia asks who this proposal came from. It turns out that Prince Valen wants to marry her, who is going to come in a few months and officially ask for her hand. The emperor says that he has already decided everything, and Petra will help with the necessary preparations so that the main character can be confident. The princess understands that Guy wants her to do some good and then throw her out of the palace. Prince Valen seems like a great opportunity to her. If she gets engaged, she will no longer be a threat to her father, and he will also benefit from the alliance. The girl pretends to be very excited about her engagement to such a magnificent and glorious prince. Guy says he seems like a great candidate for her. The emperor hopes that she will not disappoint the empire. Apollonia thanks her father, but warns that she has one wish. She asks the emperor to allow her to travel to Risheng province, given to her by her grandfather, before the prince formally proposes to her, in order to fulfill his duties as guardian. In the Samara Empire, girls reach adulthood at 17, and only then can they get married. Those who had the title also begin to fulfill their duties. Although many people left the lands of Rishon, this place became a home for those who wanted to hide. And these lands are the only thing that the main character inherited from her grandfather, and which Guy did not take away from her. She wants to go there and check something. The emperor declares that this may be her land, but it is lifeless, and there is nothing but danger there. The girl objects that this is the only thing left of her grandfather. She promises to return before the guests arrive. Guy thought that if he took away the land Rishon from his daughter, people would consider him selfish. The man still allows her to go there, but reminds her to take an experienced knight with her so that he does not worry about her safety. The princess, feigning great joy, thanks her father for his kindness and understanding. After talking with her father, the girl walked alone around the imperial court. Suddenly, in the distance, she notices Gareth with a servant girl. The princess thinks this man is pathetic. Suddenly, Apollonia realizes that the girl being taken away by the prince is her friend Adrian Reese. Her Highness is ashamed of what Gareth is doing. He decided to lure the servant to a quiet place, using the excuse that he was drunk. Looking at this couple, it would be clear to anyone where the prince is taking the girl and why. However, the main character is unable to do anything about it. The garden does not belong to her, and even if she calls out to Gareth, there will be no point in it. Suddenly, a familiar boy named Nisha Lipper approaches her and asks what she is doing here. Apollonia comes up with a cunning plan. She tells Nisha that she was looking for her headdress here, which she dropped somewhere in Sarbia's garden. The boy wanted to run into the garden to search, but returned because he noticed that someone was there. The princess says that this cannot happen, because only members of the imperial family are allowed to enter this place. But Nisha swears that he was not mistaken, and there is definitely someone there. He assumes that a thief got into them. The child says that Prince Paris urgently needs to know about this, to which Apollonia readily agrees. His excited brother runs up to Paris. He asks what happened. Paris Bianus Perdian is the crown prince of the empire. His dark hair turned golden brown after Helen's death, and people decided that it was a symbol of Apollo. Nisha told the prince about the whole situation. He asked him to calm down and tell him if he saw only one person and what he looked like. Apollonia, who appeared after the boy, says that there is a man and a lady in the garden. She assumes that this man is her master. The guests advise the prince to go there with his guards and teach the thief, who climbed all the way into Sarbia's garden, an unforgettable lesson. Paris began to brush it off, saying that one of the guests got drunk and ended up in the wrong place. But his friends urged him to check everything because it could be planned in advance. The heir, who knew from the very beginning that Gareth was there, became angry because he had been trying to ignore it all the time. Arriving at the garden, the prince and princess were very surprised when they heard a plaintive female voice and a male voice from there, ordering her to obey. One of the guards says that he will now follow him, while Paris thinks that rumors will circulate about this incident for a long time. The guards detained Gareth, who struggled and shouted that they did not yet know who he was. But the voice of Paris, which ordered him to be quieter, instantly made the prince calm down. Having punched the man in the face, the prince declares that he does not dare do such a thing in the imperial palace. The heir says that this time the blame lies entirely with him, and he will no longer help him. The prince threw the womanizer to the ground, shouting that he did not dare harm a woman in his own garden. While Gareth was repenting, one guard suggested sending him back so that he would no longer come into view of the princess, but another said that this would not help. Apollonia, who realizes that she is not doing this for Adriana, but for herself, suggests that the prince send Gareth back. The princess says that she wants to treat the lady because she cannot return to her aunt's estate in this form. Paris orders Gareth not to come near his garden again. He promises to chat with him about his crime at Nisha's coming-of-age ceremony. When the prince and his guards left, the guard asked the princess to pay attention to Adriana's deplorable condition. Apollonia said to take her to the bedroom. The maid woke up on a luxurious bed, but remembering what happened to her, she began to cry. Noticing the princess, she immediately began to officially greet her, but she said that everything was fine and she didn't have to do it. When asked by Adriana, Apollonia replied that she was in her room. Naya says that the young duke was sent back and she will not be punished, but she needs to keep a low profile. Adrian wonders what happened to him. According to the princess, Gareth was only guilty of causing a scene in her brother's garden. He is not accused of any other crimes. The servant asks if this means that only the reputation of the garden is tarnished, to which Apollonia says that none of her family will suffer. Also, no one would blame a member of the imperial family. Adrian, who remembered that she worked as a maid at the Lipper estate, suddenly realized that she no longer wanted to return there. She knelt down in front of the princess and admitted that she wanted to tell this together with her highness. A nasty male voice tells Adriana that she has a cute face. He asks if she can escape, but the girl orders him to shut up. Looking at the princess, the servant thinks that she is different from other members of the imperial family. Apollonia does not ignore or use people. The maid firmly decides that she wants to stay with this man. Bowing his head, Adrian tells the princess that her whole life and death are in the hands of her highness, and her desire is in order. Apollonia says that she finds it hard to believe that she risked her life for her because she is not even her owner. The maid thought that according to rumors, the princess was completely different. It turned out that she is not so fragile and sweet, but persistent, like the Duchess. The main character tells Adriana that she may regret taking her side, but she promises that this will not be the case. The servant says that sometimes servants are dissatisfied with their masters, but for the sake of Apollonia, she is ready to give her life at least 10 times. Lowering her head, she adds that if little Duke Gareth had come to her, everything would have been different. Her Majesty does not answer this in any way. She asks the maid to tell her about her family. Adriana's stepfather took her from the orphanage. She is a commoner, so he had to work several jobs at once so as not to become poor. They then met the Duchess, and she moved into her estate as a maid. Petra's treatment of her was terrible. The princess inquired about her father, to which she said that Pedro works in the imperial palace. Apollonia asks if he came to the palace after his retirement. The maid replies that this is so, and that all their money went towards treatment. The lady is surprised that for some reason her aunt kept everything a secret. The next question took Adriana by surprise. The princess asks what she thinks about the little duke. The maid says he is worse than a dog. Apollonia agrees with her words. Extending her hand to the girl, the main character says that she liked her and promises to find a way to get her out of that palace. While drinking coffee, Petra thinks that Apollonia is excluded from the heirs, which means that the biggest eyesore has been eliminated. The lady promises to put Lippers on the throne with her own hands. Everything will be strengthened when Paris becomes emperor. Petra finds it suspicious that Apollonia decided to visit the province of Lucian. However, her absence will only play into her hands. Remembering her subordinate, who assured that he did not feel the presence of energy, the woman was convinced that the princess's killer was dead. She pulls herself up, pleased with herself, thinking that now she only has to take care of Gareth and Adrian Reese. She plans to let a certain person know where she is when she returns. The Duchess can't trust anyone. Suddenly, a subordinate bursts into Petra's room and says that he has something important to tell her. The woman asks if this matter can wait until tomorrow, but he says that it is very serious. Reading the letter that her subordinate gave her, Petra became furious. In it, Pedro Reese asks to officially marry his daughter Adrian with Duke Gareth, since they have mutual feelings for each other. Petra orders to hit the one who brought this letter. This will be her answer. But the servant says that this would not be very wise on her part. The Duchess asked why he thought so, and the man replied that there were rumors that the little Duke was trying to take advantage of the girl. The subordinate informs that people said that Gareth has dishonored a noble girl and must take responsibility in the form of marriage. Petra realizes that if Adrian returns from treatment and asks to marry the Duke, it will be difficult to use her as a maid, refusing the offer. And if she returns her after refusal, then people in the Empire may mistake them for a couple, and Gareth's future will be in jeopardy. She tells the man to do as he sees fit. Petra will persuade him to use the money and will do everything to prevent Adrian from seeing the Duke again. Placing a large bag of coins on the table, Apollonia says that she cannot say no, because now it belongs to her. A joyful Adriana declares that from now on she is Her Highness's servant. She devotes her life to serving her mistress. Looking at the sorcerer, Sid says that according to Her Highness, he has already adapted, but he himself does not think so. Uriel, who is sitting next to him, says that he is not going to get used to him. Sid believes that his manner of speaking and showing himself has not changed at all. Wolf thinks that this is all because Naya did not order to respect herself. Suddenly the man, hearing that the guy called the princess by name, became furious and ordered to call the lady according to his status. They fell into an awkward silence as the sorcerer loudly released the air from his stomach. Sid asked how many days he had not eaten. He says that people like him eat when they are given food. The man is surprised where the princess can find such strange types. When the door of the room creaked, the trio realized that Apollonia was about to enter and stood up. Sid asks the sorcerer to straighten up and not wipe his hands on his clothes. The princess entered, and Uriel was already staring at her. The girl admitted that she was late because an unforeseen circumstance had happened. Sid says that he is honored to be at her coming-of-age ceremony, and the sorcerer says that he says strange things and simply compliments the mistress's appearance. The girl agreed with them, but asked them to put off embarrassing things today. The princess asked Uriel about his mark, but he remained silent and stared at her. Then Apollonia repeated her question, but more excitedly. The guy replied that his pain was getting worse over time. The sorcerer says that this always happens, and in order to get rid of the mark, you need to go to the original owner or kill him. The princess asked if he had prepared everything, to which the magician said that he could begin the ritual. Apollonia reminds Uriel that he has no right to refuse, even if he chooses death after his release. Wolf says that he has no objections, which greatly upsets her. After this, the sorcerer begins a ritual, as a result of which a large luminous halo forms under the princess and Uriel. The guy felt a pain in his head, to which the magician said that he needed to be patient a little and it would soon go away. When he asked to use the key, the main character boldly made a scratch on her finger, the blood from which fell on the floor. She raised her hand to Uriel's face, casting a spell in which she would grant him freedom. The guy realized that from that moment she was his new mistress. The next day, Apollonia tells the guy that a corpse similar to him will be found in the Dean River. According to the magician, there are no marks on corpses, since they disappear when the object dies. They don't have to worry about this. The lippers won't suspect anything. Suddenly, the girl hands him a rose flower, but he asks why he needs it. Uriel laughed when the lady said that she was giving him the rose just because she was beautiful. The next moment, the main character calls out to Uriel and asks him to take her to Lishan. Apollonia says that she needs an escort, and he is very suitable for this task. The guy is hesitant about whether he can handle it or not. He reminds her that he previously wanted to kill her. The girl says she doesn't care, and it's hard not to take into account someone as valuable as him who can fight back against Lipper. Uriel asks what will happen to him if he refuses. The lady says that for this she will take his life, as she promised. But she asks him to give his life for her anyway, if he was going to die anyway. The princess asks him for help to carry out the plan. The guy asked about the plan, and she promised to tell about it later. He will learn fencing from Sid if they succeed. And if the plan fails, the princess says that he will also learn fencing from Sid, but as a punishment. Unexpectedly, the guy shared the idea that it seemed to him that the princess wanted to save his life. Apollonia asked why he thought so. He explains that she gives him a new reason to live every time: fencing, food, the outside world, and that red rose. The princess smilingly asked if this meant that he had hope. Uriel tells the girl that she is different from Duchess Lipper in many ways, and this delights him. The guy sat down on his knees in front of the mistress. The girl asked if he had made his choice, to which he replied that he was going with her to Lishan first. The girl said that it was wonderful, while Uriel kissed her palm romantically. The lady was slightly embarrassed, and the guy, looking at her, remembered her words that since he was going to die anyway, then let him give his life for her. The wolf realized that the reason to live, which he could not find for so long, merged with what he would die for. Night has come. Apollonia watches as her white-haired subordinate forcefully deals with a group of knights using his hands and explosions. He killed all his opponents and appeared before the mistress, who was not delighted with his skills. Uriel then fights against a group of armed bandits who demanded money from him. Sid, who was watching the fight, ordered the other knights not to interfere because he needed to test his skills. The former assassin easily dispatches his opponents to the ground and leaves, realizing his victory. Having got into the carriage, Sid made sure that he had not killed those robbers. He recommends that he use his head and find his own tricks in wrestling. The princess sitting opposite them says that the third meeting with the bandits went better, but she did not expect them to be so weak. It seems to Sid that they are cursed. Their situation at times is like a hot or icy sandy wind. Apollonia says that no one cared about those robbers. Rich landowners did not want to buy their lands because they knew about the troubles from there. Pascal III, at one time, received the possessions of Lishan in lieu of taxes from the lord. The late emperor left these lands unattended, so over time they fell into disrepair. Most of Lishan's inhabitants were gypsies, many of whom belonged to the Bella clan. This girl was famous for her beauty, although this was not an advantage for theft. The main character says that the knights did not put up much resistance. Sid agrees with her, because Uriel couldn't even cope with real knights. The lady says that in this case they cannot remove the knights, and no matter what she does, they will find out about everything in the palace. The princess thinks that the robbers were the best option in the beginning, and offers Uriel her help. The guy didn't answer her, and the man was indignant, saying, "Let her spoon-feed him." Uriel realizes that if they team up with the robbers, the knights will not understand their intentions. He needs to not hurt anyone and not show his face. While the passengers of the carriage were also busy reasoning, he began to doubt that everything would be so simple because the three of them were to be kidnapped. Looking out the window, the wolf noticed several people who were spying on them, which he immediately informed the lady about. Apollonia says that this is wonderful and orders the coachman to drive slower because they are supposed to be kidnapped tonight. Sid praised the guy's disguise and asked about his poison. He replied that thanks to him, they would sleep until tomorrow morning. Harnessing the horses, the trio decides to leave the rest to the robbers and let the knights believe that they have been kidnapped. Having climbed onto the horse, the main character says that they will do what they planned. They will appear at the right time and say that they escaped. But before they had time to start their journey, they heard someone's evil voice demanding that they give him everything they have and go away. It turned out to be a masked child who threatened the princess with a knife. If she surrenders to him now, he promises not to harm anyone. Apollonia calmly asked the stranger who he was and said that he would not be able to take all their luggage with him. The child says that she should not be underestimated because she is Tanya, a 13-year-old native of Lishan. She demands that the princess take off the ring and give it to her. The girl was surprised at how good the robber's eyesight was, since she immediately noticed her ring. Tanya expresses the idea that they are all foreigners, so she promises not to touch their horses if they give her things, when suddenly Sid grabbed her by the hood. The child began to break free from the old man's hands and scream, but he only said that she allowed herself too much. The villainess complains that they don't even know who they are dealing with because the entire Lishan is in the palm of her hand. Sid said that this was nonsense and would send her away immediately. The girl was interested in the words of the robber. She asked if she knew the way to Mount Kalt. Recently, only monsters live on this mountain. There was a constant fire there, and in the very heart of this dangerous place, which no one can approach and which no one can predict, Apollonia's grandfather hid a piece of the empire. If the main character's assumption is correct, then there must be something hidden in the very center of Mount Kalt. And if she makes even one mistake, then her whole plan will fail miserably. Tanya says that she, of course, knows this mountain, on which she deftly dodges monsters, while they would have already said goodbye to their lives there. Suddenly, the princess orders Sid to burn the girl. The robber screamed, and he was very surprised by this, because Tanya is still a child, and it is better to use a sword. It turned out that they misunderstood the lady. In fact, she ordered Tanya to be brought, but they heard something else. The main character tells the girl that now she will show them the way to the mountain. Having walked a short distance, Tanya stated that they could not go further, because with the onset of darkness, monsters crawl out, and there were no villages further. Uriel shares the idea that the house of this robber is somewhere nearby. While the girl continued to prove that she was right, the princess asked the guy what he meant. He believes that Tanya is extorting money from travelers for an overnight stay, and if they look rich, they will wake up in the morning without their wallets. The robber continued to deny this, to which Sid agreed. On the way to Mount Kalt, there are practically no places where you can stay overnight. The child was happy about this, but at that very moment she was frightened by the man's words. If she steals something from them, she will pay for it with her life. Apollonia decides to go to Tanya's house to spend the night there. The girl was already happy that they obeyed her, but the princess suddenly asked the white-haired man to cut a large stone with a sword. Uriel carried out the mistress's order, which greatly frightened Tanya. According to Apollonia, this will happen to her if she dares to threaten them in the future. The girl, stunned, asked if they really kill people, to which the main character said that they could try it on her. After a while, Tanya presented her house to the gentleman. She says her family will be back later, so they can take the empty room. Looking around the old, poor premises, the knight wonders if there is a more acceptable house nearby. The princess asked the girl about this, and she said that there were no tourist or overnight stays here, and all the dwellings were similar to her home. Uriel asks if no one here will sell basic necessities for money or jewelry, to which Sid says that if they were, then no one would come here. But the guy believes that someone should do this, and it is unlikely that robbers who do not have food at home would begin to rob for gold and clothes. Tanya admits that in fact, there is someone who takes the gold obtained by the robbers and punishes them if they do not bring enough of it. The lady asked where this man lived, and the girl said that on the estate. This surprised Apollonia, because the Lord of Lishan does not live here, but the girl says that the gentleman lives in the center of Lishan, and only there can he get food and clothing. They cannot go anywhere without his permission. Apollonia asked if this meant that they were taking the stolen things to their master, to which the child nodded. The princess thoughtfully named the gentleman Viscount Mason Diamond, which surprised Tanya, because they simply call him Mr. The lady promises to find out the details later and asks the knight to give her a bag of coins. She gives Tanya money and says that it will be enough for her and her family for several days. She advises the gypsy to buy blankets and clothes and renovate the house. The child is very surprised by the real gold, and the girl adds that in the capital, this amount could buy back an entire carriage. Tanya hears very happy words for herself. She can buy whatever food she wants and will receive a reward for her work. After some time, the seed of the robber came home, her grandmother and her brothers. However, having noticed Uriel among the guests, the brothers got scared and promised to return everything that they had stolen from him. Only he would leave them and the grandmother alone. The main character remembers that these are the same robbers who attacked them recently. A woman approaches her and advises her to drink a certain drink, since they are probably tired. Apollonia recognizes her. They met during the raid. The granddaughter tells the old woman that these are their guests who promised to give gold coins as a reward. Hearing this, the brothers relaxed and were happy, and the grandmother told the guests not to drink the drink she gave, because she would give something tastier. Perplexed guests watched as the gypsies exchanged their bottles for others. At first the men didn't understand why, but then they laughed. Putting back the seized bottles, the old woman asks for forgiveness and says that in fact it was poison. Bella was not called a witch for nothing, because she was well versed in poisons and magic. The king, who fell in love with her, but at the same time tortured innocent residents, and the Archduke died during a brutal gladiatorial fight. Because of this legend, Bella was nicknamed the Witch and the Devil, and her deep knowledge of poisons and witchcraft only strengthened this image. Poisons and medicines, as long as there were enough ingredients, were used to create incredible things. The princess wonders whether Bella is just a pharmacist or has other talents. Tanya says that the whole kingdom knows her grandmother. She cures diseases and makes those who are healthy suffer. Bella tells her to stop talking nonsense and reminds her to take her medicine. The princess asks if she knows the gentleman well, to which the grandmother says that he has messed up a lot of things. According to Bella, Diamond monitored their territory for several decades and at one point called himself a lord. The lady clarifies whether he took their property under the pretext of taxes. She says that it was so. He forbade residents from traveling outside Lishan. Bella cannot help but worry, saying the following: "The master even used threats, and their family was no exception." The old woman says that Tanya was only 5 years old when her daughter died and left 5 children. Her grandchildren miraculously managed to survive. The main character asked what Diamond does with the stolen goods, to which Bella said that she spends everything on entertainment and uses the girls. The princess asked not to talk further, since a little girl was standing next to them. The old woman is glad that she only has one granddaughter. Tanya, who bursts into tears, is asked if she has ever seen Diamond. Last year, one relative from a family of robbers, with whom Tanya was detained because he could not reach the quota. The man was flogged in the town square as an example and given poison to drink. Bella's dear granddaughter disappeared, but during the punishment, she attacked the Viscount, who was punishing her relative, and bit him on the hand. The old woman says that fortunately she managed to escape, but since then she has lived in fear. That's why her granddaughter is afraid of the master. But the princess interrupts her and asks what her words mean about Tanya disappearing. The girl explains that she is hiding now. Her grandmother changed her eye color because Diamond was fascinated by Bella's eyes. The woman says that she heard that the lady paid a lot of money, so she asks to take Tanya with her when she leaves. The princess first asked why she was making such a request to her. The old woman says that Apollonia is not interested in Lord Diamond and his mansion, and she is the one who does not want to be a lord herself, but cares about other people. It turns out that old Bella can see the hidden sides of people, so she trusts the main character. The princess thought for a long time, but still said that she would have to refuse. Bella asks if she is sure, and Apollonia says that it will be difficult for Tanya to abandon her family, and besides, she is not suitable for caring for a child. Instead, the lady gives them her word. When she returns from Mount Calt, they will never see Viscount Diamond again. One man asked the princess how they should understand this, to which she replied that it was literal. They can take Tanya and go wherever they want. The girl says that this is all he can do for them, after which he suggests they start dinner. However, the old woman is overcome by doubts. She asks how they can believe her. The princess gives Bella a bag of coins and says that she can take it as compensation for not keeping her word. The stunned witch says that she has never seen so many gold coins in her life. By giving away her brooch, Apollonia hopes that this will be enough for them. With this money, they can buy horses and good clothes. In return, the lady asks to give them some food as they have a busy schedule and will need to wake up early tomorrow. The old woman says that she has never met anyone like the princess. She asks how she can repay them, but she says that for now they can only guide her and she doesn't need anything else. Bella advises Nia to take one of her grandchildren. One is single, the other is handsome, and the third is an excellent singer. She is sure that the lady will like someone. In response to this, Apollonia orders Uriel to remove his hood, as a result of which a guy of unearthly beauty appeared before the gypsies. The girl says that she is very sorry, but the standard is too high to achieve. The main character asks the witch if anyone else can brew a potion to change eye color. The old woman says that there are few such people, but advises the girl not to worry about it. As far as she knows, no one can imitate the same eyes as the princess, bright red with a gold rim. Bella believes that only a genius could brew a potion that would make her eyes look as red. In the morning, Uriel, while the team was heading towards the mountain, asked the lady about their plan, but she did not answer. One of the gypsies reports that they have almost reached the place where, according to rumors, there used to be a volcano. It's almost impossible to find, but there is a crater at the top. The other mountains vary in size and shape, and according to legend, God created them that way as a joke. The mountain with the crater even has its own name, the Heart of Calth. The main character asks if a burning mountain is another form of volcanic eruption. The robber says that it is, and that the volcano is long dead, and the mountain rings are outside the crater. Only mana trees can survive such temperatures. The girl also asked about the living creatures in this area, and the guy said that the land here was barren, but when walking close to the mountain, wild animals could attack. Gypsy emphasizes that the flames here are spreading quickly. Uriel feels unusual. The closer to the mountain, the harder it rains and the sun goes out. Her Highness orders the white-haired one to go with her and tells the others to stay with her. But Sid says that it could be dangerous and asks her to let him come with her. The princess admits that she does not want to leave Tanya's family without protection. In addition, Uriel is a very capable escort. She says she just wants to explore the mountain. She needs to do it herself, so the others just have to wait for her to return. The main character was already about to leave, but at Sid's request, she made a promise that she would not come too close to the mountain. The gypsy asks Apollonia to put on a cloak that his grandmother recently knitted. He will protect her from danger. The main character gladly puts on her cloak, thanks the guy, and finally says that she is leaving. Moving a little away from the group, Uriel told the lady that their journey would take half a day if they hurry. The young man then asked what the princess was going to do, to which she emphatically stated that they would climb the mountain itself.